for taking the time to meet with me today, Peggy. Please tell us your full name and a little bit about where you were born and your family of origin.
Okay, my name is Margaret Rhodes Fawcett Edwards, commonly known as Peggy Edwards. I was born in Neenah, Wisconsin. I lived in southern Illinois until I was about 11 and moved to Redlands, California with my family and lived there through high school. My family of origin is Midwestern roots, but transplanted Californians, as many Californians are. Mom, dad, and 2 sisters. The kind of all-American family, except 3 kids and all girls.
What, if any, religion were you raised in?
Was raised in the Presbyterian Church.
Do you still attend that?
No.
Do you attend any church? What is strategic planning as opposed to project management?
That's figuring out what those deliverables are for each project. So strategic planning is really thinking long-term, thinking what are the longer-term deliverables or outcomes? What is it you want to achieve? And then how do you get there? It also really involves what are the longer-term goals? If you think about it, it really is, what's the vision? What do we want to achieve? What do we want to become? And then the mission, what is it we deliver? And then how do we get to both of those? How do we deliver the mission? And then how do we achieve that?
What is organizational development?
Organizational development is, I guess, and think about those 2 terms together, it's really how an organization functions internally, how it works together. I'm working with 2 organizations right now, about half-time with each. The development stage of each of those is at a totally different place. It involves culture, it involves making sure that you have the right resources, but mostly it's how does it function, how does it work, and how does it grow and learn from lessons, the learning organization, if you will.
What does employee engagement mean?
How much do you love your job? If you think about engaged people in organizations that are engaged, they behave, they perform, they do things so much differently than people who are not engaged, people who just go for the paycheck or put their time in. I've seen people in my career that were retired at age 45. They weren't giving, they weren't growing, they weren't learning, and I don't understand really why.
And they worked for 20 more years.
And they have at least 20 more years, probably even 30 now with retirement being what it is. So they have a long time to go, but they're retired on the job. So if you have the luxury, and I have to qualify that, if you have the luxury of being able to seek out a job that really engages your head as well as your hands, that's what I push people to do. A lot of people don't have that luxury. I totally understand that. That's the kind of work that I do, is working with people who don't have that luxury now, but how you can help them work towards a place where they do have that luxury.
Is that to work towards transitioning to another position?
Yes.
Or work towards getting excited about what they're doing?
Oh, it could be both. It could be both, because you can take the current job that you're in, and if you have enough guts to make it change, make some things change to work for you, then I think you can turn your job into something that engages you. But let's face it, not every organization is open to having people suggest ways that would be more engaging.
Is leadership learnable?
Yes. Leadership is as learnable as behavior is changeable, because leadership really is behavior change. And if you believe that people can change, that they see, this is how I want to behave, this is how I want to interact with people versus here's how I do it now, then leadership is learnable. Leadership is not getting people to do what it is you want them to do. Leadership is helping a group of people achieve deliverables that they've all agreed on. You're a facilitative leader, and that's where the word facilitate comes from, make easy. That's your job, is to make getting to where you've all agreed you want to go easy.
Please tell me about reentry.
Reentry. It's a word that probably the better word is reintegration, but we haven't kind of converted people into thinking that way. Reentry, as it's commonly used and the way I'm working with it now, is people who are formerly incarcerated, who are coming back into their communities, where they need to be able to be reintegrated into the community in a way that keeps them from going back into incarceration, whether it's county or state or federal.
That's something that we're not very successful at in this country. We have a very high recidivism rate.
So there are wonderful pockets of success all over the country. I happen to live in a state that's not been successful, and I live in a county that's not been successful in keeping that recidivism rate down.
Why is he successful and we're not here?
You'll find programs like that all over Los Angeles County and all over California. What you won't find is a system at either the state level or the county level that supports or links those programs together. What you'll find is public policy for years and years and years that was focused on building more prisons, to the point where the federal government stepped in and said you can't continue to put people in the prisons and in the medical facilities in our state because you are violating their rights. It's cruel and unusual punishment. And the state finally responded to that under court order.
But they just let people out. That doesn't do any good.
No, they're not just letting people out. They're beginning to look at the nature of the violation instead of saying, let's just lock people up and throw them away, throw the keys away. They're beginning to look at and say, there's a series of felonies that have put people in prison that are nonviolent, non-serious, and non-sexual predators. They're not sexual predators, they're not violent. So most of these are drug. Most of these are drug sales or possession or use. And how those have been applied to people basically has to do with race, community, homeless or housed status of who actually goes to jail over the years, if you look at the statistics. And so what they're saying is that in order to reduce, one side is saying, in order to reduce the prison population, in California 900 people come in every day, 900 people come out. You can reduce it by stopping the flow in. And so if you don't send nonviolent, non-sexual predators, non-serious offenders to state prison,
drug court is
that's one way, or you put them in county jail, then but it's cheaper and it's more effective to incarcerate people in county prisons or jails for a couple reasons. One is it's less expensive. And secondly, they are close to their community, and that's really the most important thing.
What I wonder is, does it decrease the recidivism rate?
Yes, it decreases the recidivism rate. Study after study after study have shown that the rehabilitation of people who are exposed to their communities, who are not out of their communities because they're at Pelican Bay or some other place.
Corcoran.
For women, it's Chowchilla, the middle of the state. There are programs like Get on the Bus where they can at least see their kids once a year. Women rehabilitate a whole lot faster with exposure to their children. And where are our prisons? And where do we put people?
In the middle of the San Joaquin Valley.
Got it.
What is Zonta International?
Zonta International is an organization of business and professional women all over the world who come together to do community service and advocacy on behalf of women. And we are in, I don't even know how many countries, 160 countries, about 40,000 members worldwide. And the programs that we do are both clubs at the community level. In my community, we have an organization, a club of about 75 or 80 members. And then we also work to do service projects around the world in partnership with the United Nations and with some of the other international organizations. A couple examples of local ones. One is that we found out that the court here has no support system for domestic violence victims. And so a person, usually a male, has an attorney, has somebody with him to represent him in court. The victim doesn't have anybody representing her. If she does, it's from the DA's office, and they are so overworked they don't have time to give a woman like that the emotional support. And so we've put into place in our court system here an advocacy program, working in partnership with the Domestic Violence Center, where we have trained volunteers who are in court who will work with that victim, who might even drive that victim to a neighboring court, let's say in San Fernando or Van Nuys if the case is not here, and be the advocate for that person and give her the emotional support. Another project that we have done over the years is a program called Life Forward, and it's for women who have not had the opportunity to go to school or are uncomfortable, let's say, going to the community college, who want a safe environment where they can learn things like financial skills. How do you budget? How do you plan for savings? How do you get your credit back if you've lost your credit either through divorce or something else? How do you do a resume? How do you do a job search? How do you go on an interview? What kind of attire should you be wearing to a job interview? Those kinds of life skills. And so we do those once a month for women in the community who don't have the courage to go to the community college
because they're traumatized.
Courage. They're traumatized, or they've had no experience in a university or a college and they're scared to go to the campus. So we help give them the confidence and do kind of a mentor program of doing those kinds of workshops. So those are two of the local ones.
Please give us an example of the international efforts that you support.
The international projects are determined every 2 years when the new international president comes into office and presents to a body of the membership these programs, and then they're voted on. And they're projects that we think can be self-sustaining if they get the seed money to start. One that came along about probably 15 years ago that I always use an example because it's just so thrilling to me was in Sri Lanka. And the women there had to walk miles to get fresh water. And they didn't have the funding to dig and dig wells. And so the funding went to dig wells and to teach the skills of digging wells to the different villages. And so women didn't have to walk to the river anymore. So that's one. If you take some of the violence against women in India, that's a program that's been going on for a number of Zanta cycles for a number of years, working with educating people about violence against women. There's a school in Afghanistan for women. When the Taliban cut off education to women, Zanta came in and opened a school there. So,
and the Taliban allowed that?
Yes. It's still going.
Great. Oh, that's good.
Obviously, it was put in an area that could be defended, and the families obviously supported it enough to keep it going. But those are the kinds of international projects where there is a need, and where Zanta can put in the seed money and then help it become self-sustaining when we move on to the next project.
Have you ever held elective office?
No, I have not. But I'll tell you, was it yesterday? I thought, darn it, I think I should run. No.
Why?
Because I think at this stage in my life that I understand what we were talking about before, and that's the unintended consequences of some of the legislation that is a lot driven by special interests. And because I believe that all issues are a circle and that you have to balance from all points of view, not just by political party and not just by who pays or who influences you, whether it's through money or other influences to get your vote. And I'm pretty disgusted with the whole system and what we've evolved to.
Was there a moment when you knew that service was going to be a major aspect of your life? And if so, please describe that for me.
Looking back, I know the exact moment that it became that.
Okay.
I grew up in a household where Dad came home from work, dinner was ready, we sat at the table together, we had dinner, and then Mom and Dad left for meetings. It was an expected thing that you did community service, that you worked on community kinds of activities in the evening. And when I graduated from college and started working, in the first 2 jobs that I had, I traveled all the time, and it didn't fit into my life to work and to contribute to my community. But my business partner had been on the national board of the Girl Scouts when she was very young, served on the executive committee at like age 31 or something like that. And she went to a national convention of the Girl Scouts, and she roomed with a woman from Santa Clarita, where I live, who'd also been on the national board of the Girl Scouts. And Pam called me, and my business partner called me one day, and she said, I can just tell you that Mary Spring from your community wants to know why you've not been involved in your community. And she's going to ask you that question. And life hasn't been the same since.
So just your buddy pointing out to you that you haven't been kind of opened you up. It's like the moment the flower opened.
I think it was Mary Spring who said, oh, your business partner lives in Santa Clarita. Why don't I know her as part of this pretty small, closely knit community? And she said, I will contact her and see if she's interested in getting involved in community projects. And Mary was involved in all sorts of projects. I think she probably just looked at me as a fresh source of
fresh meat.
Well, I was going to say that. A source of fresh energy where the same old people have been doing the same thing, and it's always good to get new volunteers involved. I think she looked at it that way. But I remember the phone call vividly, and sure enough, I got a phone call very shortly thereafter. And I became involved in Zonta, and Zonta International in this town is involved in every bit of the nonprofit sector and the